Thanks for joining us. I'm here with Sizzyl. Sizzyl's done a few GM videos on tank and also support, but this video here is going to be us running through some questions on tank. So you've been playing Overwatch for how long now?
So I've been playing Overwatch since the actual real launch of the game. I didn't play the beta like a lot of other people, but I did play the launch way back in I don't remember when. I think September 2016 or something, August 2016. Long time ago. So it's been 7 years at this point, give or take.
Yeah. So were you always playing tank, or did you play other in Overwatch when you first started playing?
Yeah, in Overwatch 1, I played DPS mainly Junkrat above all else. I had very little playtime on tank in Overwatch 1. I actually really got into the role in Overwatch 2, funnily enough. That's when I started playing, and I got really addicted to it. It was a really fun time.
So what made you decide to try tank out?
Well, I always did every season in like Overwatch 1. I always did my placements on tank and support and stuff, and in Overwatch 2, I was going to do the same thing. But when I was doing my placements in Overwatch 2, it was a lot more fun than I remembered, so I got back into the swing. Well, not back into, I guess, just into the swing of things for the first time.
You've been playing since the launch of Overwatch 1. That's how many years this has been out now?
Yeah, 7.
7 years. So, and you're still playing it. So what keeps you coming back and playing Overwatch?
Well, so I don't play consistently. I mean, across 7 years, I have 1,400 hours, at least on my main account. I do have some smurfs with a few extra hours here and there, and that probably adds up to another 100 or 200. But the main thing that keeps me coming back to Overwatch is the characters. Like, a lot of the play styles and abilities these characters have just don't exist anywhere else. Like, I can't think of another game where something like Lucio or Wrecking Ball or even like Reinhardt actually exists and is fun to play.
Yeah, I agree. It's really fun. When I first got into it, it was really fun to get into, and just with all the different characters, it still kind of reminded me of like a WoW arena feel. Yeah. I don't know if you ever played WoW or not, but you know where you was like 5v5.
I know you mean.
Yeah. But it's kind of the concept, but with a more, not a fantasy twist on it as WoW was. What is your current rank on tank right now?
So it kind of depends on the account. I mean, at this point, I have so many accounts, it's hard to keep track of them. But on my main account, I am currently GM5. I dropped out of like GM4 like the other day. But I do have other accounts that are as high as currently GM2 and GM3.
What's your highest rank that you've ever hit on tank?
So the highest I've ever hit on tank was GM1, but I didn't hold it very long. I think on the account that was on, I held mainly GM2 throughout the whole season, and I did hit GM1, but I dropped back down before ending with them.
Yeah. So you think if you would have done anything differently, you could have maintained that rank, or was it just kind of?
I think realistically, I probably could maintain a GM1 tank. The problem is, of course, to maintain a super high rank, you do need a lot of playtime in competitive, all on the same account. And I do get pretty bored of a lot of the high elo metas. They're just not very fun a lot of the time.
Like, what kind of commitment would it take to become top 500?
So are we talking like me personally, if I had to do it?
Just like in general,
ground up?
Just like from the ground up, or in general, like even if you wherever you want to do, like if it's just you and, like what would your time think have to look like that would be different than from what you're doing today, I guess would be a good way to go about that.
So for example, like last season, I played about 30 hours worth of tank in competitive. And I think to get top 500 consistently every season, I would need at bare minimum probably close to 50 or 70 hours every season. And if I'm a new player, you have to have crazy high numbers. I mean, like, this actually kind of applies for every role. I think one of the top mercies, like, forgot their name, but one of the top mercies had like, even I think 3 weeks into the season had something like 100 hours.
Oh wow!
Which seems like a lot of playtime in it, and I think it still is. But that's the kind of commitment you need to hit top 500, because everyone in top 500 has that type of playtime.
Okay, yeah, and that's just playtime and nothing extra outside of trying to hone skills or anything, right?
Yeah, that's not including the hundreds of thousands of hours they've spent, grinding up their skills in the first place. Like my first ever climb, I didn't say this earlier, but in Overwatch 1, I was mainly plat and I hit diamond at some point around when I was quitting. But the first time I hit masters was a season where I sat down and I played 80 hours in one season. And that was
Oh,
the first time I climbed super hard. It's because playing consistently, like all the time, even if you had the skills before, it's the kind of building that muscle memory and the climb will only happen if you sit there and grind it, right? Even the best players in the world have at highest, I think, like a 60% win rate, which
wow.
means
Yeah.
out of every 10 games, they're still losing 4,
Or yeah, no matter
right?
what. And
Which
then again,
means you just need that play
mm,
time to kind of catch up with
yeah,
that.
because the playtime, and I know at different ranks, there's different. The games move at different speeds.
Yeah.
So that would have to be where you're getting that playtime in to get used to how the fast the pace of those
That
games.
is part of it. It's like you
Yeah.
kind of adjust to get there every
Hmm.
time, but part of it's also that you literally like unless you're winning every game, you cannot climb super fast.
Right.
Right, you will
Yeah.
just take time. Assuming you're winning 6 out of every 10 games, it will likely take you probably about 70 wins to climb from, like, let's say, gold to, like, gem.
Wow. Each class plays a different role in the game, like support. And what would you consider the role of a tank is in Overwatch 2?
So I think every tank will tell you this, the entire purpose of tank in Overwatch 2 is to make space, and that's kind of a complex term, it's not very
Mm-hmm.
easy to explain, it's something you get the hang of the more you play tank. And it's the whole goal of that is literally just open up the map for your team, right? Like dominate an area so hard that your Widowmaker can look at a new sight line, that they don't have to fear the enemy being there or something like that. And that's kind of your job as the tank is to open up the map for your team so that they can then, get all the kills and damage and stuff. And you can obviously get kills and damage along the way while you're doing that.
So making space, and then is there any part of like protecting the team that comes in with that, or is it just yeah,
Generally, the idea of making space is you make safe space, make it so you
okay,
don't even really have to protect your team because they're just gonna be safe by
say
your
yeah.
presence
So
alone,
yeah, because you're keeping the
right? If
enemy
if
team
all yeah,
back, so they're
if
not
all 5
going in.
enemies are looking at you and trying to deal with you, they can't be dealing with your team, right? If I'm being a menace in the front line, they can't just ignore me, and if they do, then I can kill 5, and if I
Yeah,
don't kill 5, my team should kill
kill
5, and
five.
that's kind of the way that
Okay.
works.
Yeah. What skills does a tank need to bring to a match? Is there communication that needs to be done, or alt tracking, or
So obviously it helps to ult track and stuff, but that's not I mean that is ult tracking will be the difference between like, a GM2 and a GM1
Mhm.
tank is whoever's ult tracking better there. But to get to that GM level in the first place, a lot of it is a mental game. First off, you need the mental to grind competitive a lot. I mean, that's how you get to that high elo. You have to play a lot of games, and you need to be mentally strong for that. Because any game you lose, you're generally going to be the first person to blame, even if it's not entirely your fault. So you need to be ready to kind of take that, all the bullshit that your teammates might say to you, and just not really take it to heart. And then and
right?
then a lot of the other mental is, you have to be a lot of tanks require you to be just smarter than the enemy. You have to play in a smarter way so that you'll live and you'll kind of expose them, or you put them in bad positions. You'll make them use a lot of their cooldowns, all the while not using your own. And a lot of that is more of a mental. It's almost like a chess game a lot of the time because a lot of tanks don't require crazy mechanical skill. I mean, some of them obviously do, but a large majority of the tank roster, really, I think you could learn the mechanics for them in probably the span of like about 20 hours of just like training or something. Like, they're not that complex.
Yeah.
But the hard part is knowing what to do when in order to make the enemy mess up and in order to take that space for your team. That's the hard part of tank, and that's what it's all about.
Tanks have different things that they're strong at. Like diving versus brawl, and which tank would you think would take the most skill to play?
So that's a really an interesting question. It kind of depends on how you define skill. Because obviously there's like raw mechanical skill, like
Mm-hmm.
typing on the keyboard and moving the mouse. But I think a lot of the skill of tank, including some of the harder tanks like Doomfist, is mainly the kind of intelligence, the way you kind of work around the enemy team, the way you kind of sneak through the middle, get some nice kills here and there, and like the way you can force them to do stuff. And from my experience, the all the tank players that are the smartest and like craziest, when I get destroyed by these people on tank, it genuinely felt like it wasn't like they abused a broken character at the time. It wasn't like their team was that much better. Whenever I feel like I get absolutely decimated by a tank, it's generally Winston players because he is the most unforgiving tank, probably one of the most unforgiving tanks in all of Overwatch, where if you mess up on Winston, you're just done for. But the highest of high elo Winstons have spent so much time mastering this character and have spent so much time thinking about this game that they've kind of pushed him well and truly beyond the limits that I don't even think anyone could have imagined he would get.
Yeah, a good Winston going against a good Winston is it makes for a hell as a support player too. So yeah, I can see that. What tank would you recommend? Somebody that wants to tank, or maybe not even a new player, somebody never played tank, they've been playing the other roles, and they decide they want to play tank. What tank do you think they should start on?
So it kind of depends on what your intentions are with playing tank. If your intentions are just to get placements done with, kind of see where you can rank without really putting a lot of time into it, Orisa is by far the easiest and most brain dead tank, and you can easily get value on them without ever getting good at playing tank. But if your goal is to learn tank from the ground up and really improve as a tank player, I think you'd either want to go with Ramatra or Reinhardt, or maybe even Winston. I think you should start with Reinhardt or Ramatra and then make your way up to Winston, because Rein and Ramatra are somewhat forgiving. I mean, especially right now, Reinhardt is not very forgiving. But if you can climb on Reinhardt and Ramatra, that's when you've gotten those fundamentals down and you can start working on other characters and kind of building up your skill set as a tank. But I think Ryan and Ram uh, are the easiest kind of learning characters where there's still some leeway, so you have the ability to mess up here and there, but there's not that much leeway, and you really start learning the tough truths of a lot of the tank. How fast you can get burst down by the enemy DPS, what you can get away with, the importance of your health pool, the use of your abilities, etc. It's all I think best shown by those characters.
It's funny that you should say that Arista is the easiest, because I agree 100%. I was thinking that because anytime I've tried all the tanks, and Arista is like, yeah, super easy. You can just sit back, shoot, and I think you mentioned in one of your videos just cycle through abilities, which gets boring.
That is literally all. Even the highest of high level Orissas, all they're doing is cycling their abilities. The difference between like a top 10 Orissa and like a bottom 10 is literally just like the thought they put between cycling those abilities, right? Instead of just spamming the buttons on cooldown, they like wait like a second or two between them.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. So the tank is very important, I think, in Overwatch 2, even more so than Overwatch 1. But you can make or break a match really easy if a tank's good or bad. And how do you handle people flame you?
So obviously you do want to take some of it to heart, right? When mainly the time when here's what I do when I get flamed by someone. First thing I do is check their profile. If they're a private profile, I just completely disregard what they're saying because it holds no value. Because they're not confident enough in their own abilities to be public profile and show their stats. So why would I trust their criticism?
That's a
Now, if
good.
someone's public profile, I then check what rank they are in tank. If they're at my rank or higher, then that's only then do I actually consider what they're saying as even possibly valid criticism. And then from there, I think about it, right? If they just say like you suck at tank, then fuck them. Like I don't need to listen to that. I don't really care. If they say something like that shatter there at the end was just awful, or like you were really out of position those last two fights. I might maybe think about that, and maybe while I'm queuing for the next game, go check the replay and kind of see what they meant by that. And I've learned a lot on tank by taking criticism from those players that are better than me with a public profile that give criticism. But 90% of what I hear on ladder is just straight bullshit. I've had people say I'm like the worst tank in the game that they've ever played with, and then I see them on the enemy team the next game, and they get absolutely decimated by me.
Yeah.
And it's like and then they say, "Oh no, your DPS carried you," and then I get him in the third game and I beat him again, and they're like, no, you're just really lucky. You got better DPS again. And it's like
Yeah.
at some point I am just a good tank, and you're just kind
Yeah.
of sad.
Right. And I think
Right.
sometimes it's situational. I mean, just, when I was first starting to play too, the support one day, I say, oh, Moria carry, and the next one, you're the worst Moria ever. It's just, it was so all over the place.
And,
So.
and the real answer is that it's neither.
Right.
Unless you're hard smurfing, in which case you're carrying. Like if I, let's say if I was in a gold lobby, then I know I'm probably actually carrying.
Right.
Unless it's that's just people gassing you up or people being angry and just lashing out.
Right.
A lot of that is not built in reality.
Right, and I agree with that. But I had a bad game on Baptiste and got told to uninstall the other day. So
that is a super common occurrence to Overwatch. Never take that to heart.
No, I don't.
Half the people that say that stuff, they really don't even mean the first word of that sentence.
Oh yeah, they're just mad.
They're just mad and just typing things.
So you mentioned stuff about like a mentality. What mentality does it take to be a tank? Because I get really stressed out tanking more than I do even with any other one, just because you're the only one, and it just seems like a lot of rest on you. So like, what type of mentality does it take to really be successful?
Well, yeah, that is the truth. Tank is hands down the most stressful role. Everyone I know that is like really good at tank, the way they get there is by literally just not really caring, right? My mentality in tank is like, I want to have fun, I want to be the center force of the team, and I want to do what I can. And as long as I'm doing that, like, I don't care what anyone else says. I don't care if I win or lose a game. And that's like the only way I'm really able to keep playing tank. And everyone else who plays tank either really loves the hero that they play or has that kind of same mentality. Because as tank, it is hands down, in my opinion, the most stressful role in the game by like a mile. Because like you said, you're the only one. You don't have anyone else to back you up. You're a really big part of the team. And something you didn't mention is most tank characters really do not have a lot of room for mistakes. Like if you mess up, you're just dead, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of the truth with tank, and you just need to be pretty mentally strong to kind of deal with that and just keep playing normally. And not a lot of people enjoy that or can really handle it. It just takes a certain type of psychopath.
Funny that you should mention mistakes, because I actually missed this question. But what are some mistakes that tanks make? And
so the most common mistake, and my most common advice, whenever someone in like a lower elo asks me, oh, my stats were really great this game, or like I feel like I'm doing well, I'm a platinum DPS, but I'm hard stuck silver on tank. Why am I just getting harder lobbies on tank? And my answer is that you're not. You just don't know how to play tank. A lot of the bad tank players are either way too aggressive to the point where they're basically just have their W key bound down and are putting a zero thought into the game, or they're way too passive to the point that you're just like shield botting on Ryan, where they have like 10 minutes into the game, they'll have like 2,000 damage and 30,000 damage block. And with tank, you need to find that middle ground. Obviously, you want to do some blocking and some kind of tanking for your team, but a lot of it is about that making space. That is what you need to be thinking as a tank. How can I open up the map for my team without dying? And that's a very hard thing to get used to, because as when you click the tank role in your head, you're thinking, okay, I'm gonna do some tanking and I'm gonna block damage for my team, just be kind of like the big guy out front taking all the damage. But you just don't. That's not how tank works. It's all about making space and using your health pool as a resource.
So it's not being a meat shield or a shield. Just get out there and push the other team back.
No, yeah. The most common problems is either that you're basically playing tank as a shield or a meat shield, or you're playing tank as thinking that you're completely invincible when you're not, and you're just dying every 5 seconds.
Getting out of line of sight and going too far, trying to do 1v5s and all that.
Those are the most common problems on tank, either being way too aggressive or way too passive. It's not even a very fine line. There's a big range in the middle, but very few people fall inside it. And that's what makes good tanks.
So with that, since you're making space, how important is positioning on a tank?
Positioning is probably the most important thing for making space. Like, even if you mess up most of your abilities, and even if you're like constantly low health or something, if you can position in a way that your healers can heal you, and the enemy team like can't really do anything because of where you are, that is what makes you win games. Like 95% of tank is positioning, the other 5% is mechanics and stuff. And the
Yeah.
positioning is mainly an extension of that kind of outsmarting mentality where you outsmart the whole enemy team and you make space for your team just purely by positioning correctly.
What does correct tank positioning kind of look like? I know this could probably differ between tanks, but just in your mind's eye, what does good tank positioning look like?
So that is a really loaded question, and I could probably spend several days straight just talking about that because it's super subjective. That depends on the tank, that depends on the map, that depends on your team comp, that depends on the enemy team comp. There's no one answer for that. It's something you will learn over time the more you play tank. But it's generally the best position in tank is the one where you're making space for your team and you're not dying. Those are the two most important things to keep in your mind.
So,
am I opening up the map for my team, and am I not dead?
So I think that's a good answer. That's a good simplified answer, because if you really, like you said, you could in Overwatch, it could get complex because it's going to be different for each comp you play anyway. So, but if you keep those two things, am I not dying and I'm making space? I think that's boiling it down to those two things. Then that's something to look for and to learn from. Obviously, tanking is different. So, as far as positioning, how does that differ from like DPS and support?
So the thing with DPS and support is a lot of your positioning is actually based off of your tank, and it's always really standardized, right? If your tank has opened up this part of the map for you, you always know where to go, right? Let's say you're on Dorado and your tank just cleared the enemy off high ground. Well, now you know to push the archway. If you're on Widow, maybe go on high ground, peek that left side. And it's almost routine for the DPS and supports.
Okay.
Like the tank, there's many ways, many positions, many different ways, especially depending on the hero, for you to open up the map for your team and for you to make space. But for the DPS and supports, you almost have like a direct path that you follow every single game, and you basically just stop at certain checkpoints or like choke points whenever your tank is not able to make that space that you need.
So basically, the tank's dictating the space, which then dictates the what opens up the support in DPS. Okay, that's awesome. Yeah,
the tank is the leader of the team. I mean, you are single-handedly deciding where your team has to play in order to maximize the value they get out of you.
Tank's obviously trying to make space. But the backline's getting destroyed. Should a tank peel for their backline?
That is mostly situational, but 9 times out of 10, no. That is your DPS's problem and support's problem, and they can deal with it. The most common advice I was given, and that I will give people in the future, is when the enemy tank is pushing your backline, you push their backline unless that tank is really low. Like if a Winston jumps your backline and is on 100 health and doesn't have primal, you can probably peel and kill him. But if it's any other scenario, now they don't have a tank. Now you can be the same menace that tank is being to your backline. And basically the better DPS and support will win out in that situation.
Yeah, because the tank peeling didn't kind of make sense to me, just because with getting, because if the job of the tank is to make space, you can't make space if you're moving backwards.
Yeah, if you're peeling, you're giving up space.
Right, and that's not
the thing is, in 6v6 in Overwatch 1, you had a second tank who could maintain that space while you were peeling, so you actually could get away with peeling, and it was a common thing. But now that you're one tank, unless you're absolutely certain that peel will actually end up giving your team more space in about 5 seconds, you will give up a lot of map control and a lot of space. Just because you peeled.
And that's probably where a lot of that tank peeling to the backline came from, with a lot of, this was new when Overwatch 2 was really first out. They were used to that 6v6 and a tank peeling for them, I'm assuming. Yeah. But I could see where that would come from. There's 11 tanks in Overwatch 2. How many should you learn?
So that is an interesting question. it really depends on what you want to get out of the role. That's kind of the thing with all of Overwatch. It depends on
Mhm.
what you want from the game. If your goal is purely to win, no matter the morals, no matter the cost, obviously, eventually you should make your way to the whole roster so that whenever the meta comes about, you know what hero to play. But realistically, I think to learn tank the best, you should one trick, and I think this goes for any role. You should one trick a hero to learn the role because one tricking will force you to overcome hardships. Like, do not swap. If you have 5 enemy people counterpicking you and you're just hard losing a game, don't swap. Instead, start thinking in your head, what can I do here with my limited abilities that are getting hard counterpicked? What are my options? And the more you play into that, the better you get as a tank player. And then once you reach a certain point with that, that's when you maybe start looking at the rest of the roster because now you're good enough, right?
Right.
If you can't beat your counters on a tank, you're not going to be able to do anything on other tanks either way.
Right. So, and you have I believe you have a video about and addressed one tricking as well.
At some point, yeah, I don't know where that is though.
Yeah. With some roles, like with DPS, you can go and do some aim trainers and in game, out of game, and really hone in your aiming to improve. How would a tank improve? Because most tanks don't shoot, anything, especially a Ryan.
Yeah, so there's a handful of characters on tank, like Ball, Doom are the
Yeah.
main two I can think of, and I think to some degree Winston with like his primal. Where you can obviously maybe with like your Q do some like Winston parkour or something, right? Get your kind of movement down for those heroes. But for the more primitive heroes like Ryan, or whatever, or Orisa, a lot of it is just either raw playtime or watching really good players play. What you can do to learn a lot on tank, because tank is 80% mental, is watch some really good player play. Watch like LH Cloudy, Anton Coco 11, like what's the guy's Cran Drop or something. Watch those guys. Watch them play a game, and instead of just like looking at it, try to think every single time they use an ability, every single time they stop at a position, every single time they decide to keep moving. Try to decipher why did they do that. What did they see or what did they think in their head that made them think it was a good idea, right? It's that's mainly the way you learn on tank. It is mainly a mental game, so the only way to learn it is either to keep playing and kind of pushing yourself, forcing yourself in bad situations, and eventually overcoming them through hardship, or watching someone who's already overcome everything and fully analyze exactly what they're doing correct and kind of mirror that.
That's a good point. With you being the only tank and you now have 2 DPS and 2 supports. What are your expectations of what the support should be doing?
So this is mainly coming from my position as like someone who plays mainly ladder. I don't really do a lot of scrims or like private games or like tournaments or whatever. As someone who mainly plays ladder, I always expect the bare minimum out of my team. Just like, throw me some heals sometimes if I'm super low, and maybe kill stuff every few fights. But as a ladder player, I've come to expect almost nothing from my team, and I'm just assuming I'm in a 1v5 situation at all times. Because then when my team does stuff, it's a pleasant surprise. When my team does nothing, it's like, well, that's exactly what I expect from ladder. And yeah, it kind of brings back to just that mentality. It's a mental game, and that's probably one of the ways I feel like I've improved as a tank is that mental kind of process for me that I just described. I think that's helped me a lot in improving myself instead of just blaming, being like, oh my Ana had low heals this game. Instead, I'm like, well, I could have played around that, gotten this health pack here or something, or played a little bit safer to not take as much damage here while still maintaining that space.
Okay, but what about for DPS expectations for DPS?
I mean, like the only real expectation is that if the enemy tank dives them solo, he should die. Outside of that, I genuinely I have zero expectation. I mean, I'm always hopeful that they can kill things, but I never assume that they will.
Yeah.
Outside of when the enemy tank dives the backline alone.
So you say so we all from GM. I mean, top 500 down, people deal with bad teammates.
Yeah, no, even the
yeah,
rank 1 players
yeah,
complain
rank
about bad
ones, right?
teammates.
And I've watched videos, and that's why, like, but how do you deal with like bad teammates? I mean, obviously, it's going to happen, so and you're going to have to
Yeah,
deal with it in
I
some
just
way.
assume all my teammates are bad unless they prove otherwise.
Yeah.
And then when they're bad, it's like that's what I expected. I mean, I had a match I think yesterday morning, where I had someone on my team that ended the game with 1,000 damage and were 2-11, and we
Hmm.
won that game
But yeah,
because I didn't expect anything from them. So I was just carrying 5 times my weight and
yeah.
managed to pull through that game purely because instead of bitching about that guy, begging him to swap or whatever, I just kept playing the game, playing my best, and ended up winning.
And that goes back to the mentality thing, because I think what a lot of people do, and I see like one player's playing bad, so they blame the whole thing, everything on that one player, and it then causes their play to suck because they're so worried about what this other person's doing instead of just, all right, this person's not going to, it's not doing it. Let's get to it, and do better, in a different way.
Yeah,
And
that is the most common problem I've seen with people that the problem is with elo inflation way back in season 3. There's a lot of really high ranked players who still have that mentality you just described,
Mhm.
but most players on the highest of elos will actually tell that person to shut the fuck up, because it's like you're spending so long either saying this in voice or typing the shit out that you could have just been playing the game. And even though that guy might not kill anything for the rest of the game, because you're typing and sitting there, you just gave the team 6 more. You could have gotten 6 kills in that time that you typed those 3
Right.
sentences.
You're not doing anything now, and now you become a problem too. So now we got
Yeah,
two problems instead of just one. Yeah,
yeah,
I like
right.
that.
That's kind of that mentality that you
Yeah.
need to reach the top.
So, what role do you think could have the greatest impact on a game? Because I mean, this is like I think to me could be almost any role, but which one do you believe could have the greatest impact on a
So
game?
I kind of agree with your take. I think it could really be any role. It's the lobbies that you get into are literally never balanced. There is no universe in which all 10 players in a lobby are exact equal skill. But
Hmm.
assuming that all 10 players were in exact equal skill, I'd say right now it's support, because they have the most game winning abilities, right?
Yeah.
Like with a tank, unless I'm like pinning someone off the map, that's like a guaranteed kill. Unless I'm doing something like that, it's never gonna beat something like an Ana anti 5 people when they don't have a Kiriko, or a Zen discording the tank who was out in the open who can now die in 1 second instead of 2.
Yeah.
Right, those are game-winning abilities and fight-winning abilities that you just don't have on other roles. But you can obviously always still carry a game on Widow, or even carry a game by just being the better tank. But I think
Hmm.
assuming everything was equal, which, like I said, literally has never happened in the history of Overwatch,
Hmm.
but assuming that was the case, I think support has the most carry potential.
Yeah, I can see that as of right now with
Yeah,
all the
yeah.
things that
Well,
you
the thing
mentioned.
was with balance changing all the time, it's always changing.
Hmm. So there's a 50 game win requirement to play competitive. Do you think a new tank that's coming in should start playing at the 50 after the 50 games, or do you think they should try to stay in quick play until they really get it down?
I think competitive is, if you want to get better at the game,
Hmm.
you should always be playing
Yeah.
competitive. Even if you keep losing all your games, then you'll be at the elo where you're best suited to learn in. Because the thing is, in quick play, people are just there to have fun. Like
Hmm.
obviously, a lot of them are really sweating and trying to win, and a lot of the time, my quick play games are actually harder than my competitive games. And it's actually mainly because accidentally, because people don't care about quick play, they're actually playing better because they're not saying they're flaming their teammates, they're literally just playing the game. And
Right.
because they're doing that in quick play, it actually makes the games
Yeah.
harder because
Yeah.
the mentality of everyone is so much better in quick play.
Right, because there's no pressure. It's like I'm
There's
just
no pressure, so there's no need to flame
it's like
anyone, and you can literally just have fun playing the game at your
yeah,
best, which
it's
makes you
like
actually better,
yes,
which is kind of funny. But you should still
yes.
go in competitive because, how are you going to get better at competitive if you're not used to the competitive mentality?
Right. Yeah, and that's what it's like you got to play competitive to get good at competitive because
Yeah, I mean, there's a
there's a
reason that
huge
everyone,
difference.
there's a reason that a lot of high level players make learning accounts that are just completely fresh accounts, and then they start from nothing in competitive and play only one hero to learn that hero. It's because in competitive, that is the learning environment.
Yeah.
If you can beat people that are trying to do everything, no matter what, whether it be counter picking, hacking, what have you, just trying to win. If you can beat them on that character, you can beat anyone, including the people in quick play.
Yeah, that makes sense. I kept hearing a thing called like Elo Hell where you get stuck in a rank and you can't get out. I think there was a one glitch that was affecting a minority, very minute
That
people.
happened in season 1 and never again. So
Right. And they keep screaming Elo Hell. Do you think that is is a true thing that's happening today?
I think Elo Hell does not exist. It's a pure mental thing. I'll be real. It's something I've succumbed to myself. It's kind of a coping mechanism more than a reality. Because what Elo Hell is it's one of two things. It's either one, people that are not playing enough to actually climb, right? So if someone has 10 wins in a season, at the best, I feel like that person should go up maybe one rank. Like that person should maybe go from plat 4 to plat 3. They literally have not played enough to deserve a rank up, right? And then there's a handful of people that they don't learn from their mistakes. They're the guys that are blaming their teammates. They see that Junkrat that's 2-11 with 1,000 damage, and they're like, "Yeah, that guy is the reason I lost this last game." Instead of analyzing how could I have won that game despite that guy sucking ass, right?
Mm-hmm.
And by not having the right mentality, that right like kind of growing mentality, the learner's mindset, people kind of just lock their abilities at a certain level. And Elo Hell is literally the game saying, unless you change how you play or get better, you're gonna be here forever. Right?
Right.
That is
Yeah.
Elo Hell is literally when the game has found your skill level and you're not improving.
Yeah, I didn't think Elo Hell was real either, even when they were talking about, even when it happened. But once again, that still didn't affect a lot of people. It just affected
Yeah,
some
it
people.
was a small minority,
Yeah.
and those people, a lot of that was actually not really a bug. It was more there was a lot of people in the lowest depths of Bronze 5, and because Bronze 5 is the bottom rank, it can actually go like several tiers lower, but it will still count as Bronze 5.
Yeah.
So like if we were still in the SR system, Bronze, 4 would it be, let's say 600 to 700 elo, right? Bronze 5 is 500 elo all the way down to even like negative numbers. So if you're at negative 700 elo, you're at the same rank as someone who's 500 elo. But you're gonna need a lot of games to get out of negative 700 elo.
Oh yeah. So with all the Elo Hell talk and them basically being their problem, those different scenarios, but somebody that's say serious about improving, how important would you say like VOD reviewing is?
So I will tell you, I started getting better the second I looked at my VOD once. And actually that's what triggered me to become a better player and start thinking about this whole mentality and just kind of improving a lot. What happened is someone said I made a bad play, and in my head, and I vocally said this, I said that is complete bullshit. And he said like check the VOD, right? And I'm like, well, that was complete bullshit. And then I checked the VOD, and he was completely right. And knowing that, it was something that kind of changed me, and I started thinking, it probably is my fault. What did I do wrong here? Sometimes VOD reviews are necessary for people to find that. For me personally, they rarely are. A lot of the time, I can tell kind of in the moment that I'm not doing enough and I need to change up what I'm doing. But just knowing, right, having seen a VOD once or twice to confirm that you're the one in the wrong, that's a big moment, at least for me. That was kind of eye opening.
Would you recommend coaching for anybody?
It really depends on the person.
Person?
I myself have never gotten any coaching of any kind. I just learned it all myself, from either I'd ask better players in my lobby or kind of listen to the advice they're giving me and just kind of improve from that, which I guess is a form of coaching. It really depends on how motivated you are as a person and how much you're willing to listen and adapt. Because a lot of people that get coaching, they just want a quick two-step solution to get better in 5 seconds. And unless you're really in the deepest depths of hell, like you're bronze 5 or something, there is no quick two-step solution. Even like the most simple grind, let's say plat to diamond, will take you a bare minimum of maybe 5 to 10 hours of really focused learning and kind of self-improvement and even like just change, mental change, game style change, what have you. So you need the right mentality to actually be coachable. Not
Right.
everyone is coachable.
Oh yeah, yeah, I
Some
know.
people are very stubborn, and don't want to change how they're doing things, and instead just they want to hear how they can improve, and then they just kind of ignore it and just do the same problem every single time.
Yeah, and those people will be stuck where they're at for a good long while.
Yeah, and then there's other people I can tell one sentence and check back in them 2 weeks later, and they rose 5 ranks. Right? It's
What?
like
Right.
it's just a lot about personal motivation. If you're very self motivated, you can do coaching fine. If you're not self motivated, just grind ladder and see what happens.
Just see it, right? Yeah. What do you think's the hardest role to play?
That is a really loaded
Yeah,
question.
I mean, just on the surface, like I mean.
So it depends on what you want to get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're talking about the hardest to maximize the value on, I think it's probably DPS or support. If you're talking about hardest to get the baseline value needed to play at a high level on, I'd say it really depends, honestly. If you have mechanic, let's say you played like CS:GO or Fortnite for many, many years, and your aim is really good. It's very easy to have the base mechanical skill set and kind of everything needed to be a GM level DPS just from the get go. And something like tank will be the hardest role for you. And it's very subjective. It really just comes down to what was your skill set before you started playing, what was your mentality when you started playing the game, how willing are you to adapt, and a lot of that will actually impact what the hardest role is per person. And a lot of that is what is right. That's a very loaded question because there's a lot involved, right?
Yeah. What's what about for you?
What's the skill floor?
Right. What about for you?
For me personally, it's
Yeah.
DPS because I've never done any kind of aim training, and my aim has never been good. And there's not many DPS that get a lot of value while just having raw good positioning or whatever.
Right. So, do you have like any other advice or knowledge that you'd like to share, or is there something that I didn't go over that you thought maybe would be good to add?
I feel like I've gotten out a lot of what I want to say. I'm sure there's more I have available in my head, but I haven't really prodded it myself that far yet. So unfortunately, not at this moment. I feel like a lot of what I said.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You gave a lot of. You definitely gave a lot of good stuff, and I really appreciate your time and you doing this with me. And that's really all the questions I have for you. So if there's nothing else to add, man, we're good to go.
All right.